Hi everyone, how are you all doing? I cannot hear you, it's the start of the day. Guys, how are you doing? Our first live convention since a long time, people. So today I would try to go into production in 30 minutes and to explain you the process. So who is betting against me? You think we will make it? Huh? You think we will make it? Everyone betting against me? Only this guy is betting for me. Okay, I understood. So let's start by introducing myself. So my name is Alon Valadji, and I'm a senior tech leader in Tikal. And I'm in the industry since '98, and in the last more than 10 years, or 11 years now, I've worked with a lot of startups, and I've even founded a startup by myself. So I have experience of what is working and what it's not in terms of speeding up development. And I want to ask you a little question. It's an open question, so feel free to shout from the crowd. What do you think that makes a product great? Anyone? You think something makes great product or not? What do you think? Oh. What do we know? We are just the developers. We don't know anything. So, yeah. Data? Okay. Some of you will say the data. Some of you will say the ease of use. Some of you will say the developer experience, and all it's correct. But I think that eventually, what makes our product great is that it's reached to our user fast, that we can get their feedback as fast as we can. And in Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, he mentioned the build, measure, learn feedback loop. So from our assumptions and idea, we build something, and then we need to ship it to the user so we can start measure the input from the user, and then we can learn the data and refactor everything we need to make our product even greater. And now I'm talking about that I think it's all about infrastructure. And again, this talk is very opinionated, and it's from my experience and from some other experience of CTOs and PPR&Ds and even tech leads and people in the industry, that it's all about the infrastructure. And when we say infrastructure, immediately it's popped to our head that the DevOps. And no, it's not only DevOps. DevOps is merely 25% of the infrastructure. We talk about infrastructure of the code. We talk the infrastructure on how we exchange data between our stakeholders and share our expectation. And this is very well explained in the book of Rosensky and Woods, Architecture Description, a very interesting book on how to architect the full stack application, and it's all about the stakeholders. And the next step is seeing is believing, okay? We can write as many user stories as we want. We can write as many user journeys, and we can write a well spec to our product, but until we see it in our own eyes, until we use the product, we don't really know what's the spec worth, okay? So we need to build it. So visual spec is one of the main things to share the data. And now I'm talking about basically how to build the infrastructure from the dev side to exchange really fast our work. And our enabler for this to be happen is Kubernetes. And Kubernetes it's maybe sound a big name for us developers, and we know it's the DevOps thing, but it's really just a software that can orchestrate containers. So we build everything in Dockers, and then we have it. So the next thing is the productivity stack, what I call productivity stack. And for me, I will tell you now what I'm choosing from our developer stack, but it can be anything that you think will speed up development and speed up the productivity. So first of all, to set up the cluster, I will use Polumi as infrastructure of a code, infrastructure as a code. And why Polumi? Because I know JavaScript and TypeScript, so it's very easy. It has a lot of SDKs in many languages, and you just write your infrastructure in a programmatic way, so it's very easy to deploy a cluster. The next thing is the Helm package manager, and we need to install some software on Kubernetes to enable us to do some of the things we want, like an ingress. So we install Nginx ingress for the reverse proxy, and we will install a cert manager to issue certificates, SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt, and we install external DNS to open DNS in Route 53 to route back to our application. The next thing is a visual editor, because we don't like the command line, to connect to our cluster and to do all the operation on the cluster. This is the first part, okay? This is the infrastructure part of DevOps. The next thing is the code of infrastructure, and I want to talk about monorepos and why I'm a big believer of monorepos. Because if I put everything on one repo, I gain so much, such as ease of code reuse, as you can see in Wikipedia. We have one place to manage our dependency. We have atomic commits, so important, because if we touch multiple applications, we have the same commit hash. If we check out a branch and we touch multiple applications, we have only single commit hash for this change, and it's not spread in many repos that we don't know where are they and who our dependencies are. So we can make a large-scale code refactoring, and it's very easy to collaborate between teams. There are limitations, yes, security. If you want to block your teammates from watching your code, you cannot do it in a monorepo. Everything is open to everyone. This is why we have a GitHub as a tool and making pull requests, and maybe we can in GitHub make a code ownership to each one and stuff like that. The next thing is we need to manage our repo. So I'm using NX to manage our monorepo, and NX is a great tool, and it's also let us build our application with best practices from the start. It has generators and executors and builders, and in the same unified commands, I don't need to remember that, okay, this Nest server has this command, and this React app has this command. Everything is unified by same commands. Like if you want to serve, we run NX serve. If we want to build, we run NX build, and it builds all our pipeline. And also, if we want to generate a new stuff, we use the generators. I will show you just in a second. The next thing is our React framework, because we love React, and this is we must have React in our application. And Next.js is a great framework that gives us zero configuration, SSR from the start, a lot of production optimization, and everything that you need, fast refresh and TypeScript support and file system routing, and even the hardest word in the world, internationalization. Another thing that I like to put inside the stack is Tailwind CSS. And like Adam Watton said, until you use it, you don't understand the power of Tailwind CSS. It's not about, it's about to give the developers the tools to write good CSS and a source of truth of our CSS, and to make it fast with cross-browser, and we have a production-ready CSS file, and it's highly optimized. It supports responsiveness and a lot of stuff. The next thing we want to show our product, our components, and to build our style guide, it's nice to use atomic design, and I have another lecture about it. And Storybook to ship and manage our component and build it in isolation, in fully isolation. And this is also great because everything I develop, I'm building and shipping even the components to our stakeholders. If it's the designer, if it's the product, even the CEO wants to see what it's the progress for us. And the last is our CICD, and I use GitHub Actions to manage the CICD pipelines and to push everything to production. So let me show you a little bit what is going on. And if we want, let's make dir. And you know what? Don't let's delete it. And let's show you the power of Next, so of NX. So I can create a NX workspace, RN 2021. And NX will give me a wizard so I can ask what I want it to be at the start. Then I can add another application. So I'm using Next.js. The application name is dashboard, of course. We all need dashboard in our product. We're building dashboard. We're using CSS. And NX also has a cloud, NX Cloud, that it can cache your builds in the cloud, and the next time you build something, it will come from the cache and not from your local. So this is really speed CI and developing. Now it will create our workspace, and I want you to show that I will open now my code editor, and I want you to show what it creates. Okay, so NX creates out this folder structure with apps and libs. So everything that has app, that is a service on the app, is in the apps folder. This is our dashboard. And automatically it created an E2E dashboard. We're using Cypress. It's the best practice is to make the E2E with Cypress. The next thing is the libs. Okay, and I created here the libs of components. So in the lib of components, I'm using Storybook and components to ship my components and build them in an isolated way. And there is also a plugin for any editor for Visual Studio Code and WebStorm to use the generators of NX. So let's say now I want to add a new component. Okay? So I just need to tell the wizard the project is components, the component name. Let's say we're making a label component. We don't use CSS because we use Tailwind for everything. And we said we want to export it in the library, and then just we run the generator. Now what it will do, it will generate us in a lib another component label. It will also add a text for it, yes, and the component in TypeScript, even with the props. Now the next thing we want to do is add a storybook for it. So we can run the stories generator, okay? And this will generate the relevant storybook for the label. Okay? So now the next thing we can do, we can run our storybook with NX task. And it's the same command to run everything, just NX run whatever you want, whatever project and the target that you want, if it's serve, storybook, and stuff like that. And let's check out for a new branch with the label component that we create. And let's start to create our label component. And I see here that we have the label component and the other button component. And we can add some class name to style our component. Let's say we want it to be font bold, everything with text to Excel. We want a nice label, okay? So now we want to ship everything to our branch. We just commit our new label. Git commit. Our awesome label. Okay? Wait. Just a minute. I didn't commit also this. It's the most important. And now we ship it to our to GitHub. We push it to GitHub, and we let our CI kick in. And I will show you just a second what the CI does. Okay? So now we have a new branch. And in the GitHub action, we can see that our CI is kicking in, and it's building everything. and it will push to our Kubernetes cluster. And let's talk about a little bit about the Kubernetes cluster. So I want to show you how to create the cluster. So we use it with Polumi, and we install the Polumi CLI, and we can now just use code to spin up a new cluster. Look how easy it is. And we have to spin it with OIDC provider because we need also to create in AWS policies that have trusted identities. And here we can see that we want to create some namespaces. So I create a function to create the namespaces on our Kubernetes cluster. After we create the namespaces, we want to create namespaces for Ingress and Nginx, for Cert Manager and external DNS. And for Cert Manager and external DNS, we also want to create a policy to be attached. So here we create a function that creates a policy and create a service account. The service account gives us the permission to Kubernetes to the stuff. The same for the Cert Manager. And all we have to do is now run Polumi app, and it will spin up the server. And now we can connect the server with the kubeconfig that Polumi gave us. So we connect to the cluster with Lens. And as you can see, we will see what we have inside the cluster. We have the nodes, 2 nodes that we decided to have, and anything else we don't have currently, but what we want to install. We want to install apps with Helm. Okay, we want to install Ingress and Nginx for our reverse proxy. We want to install Cert Manager and external DNS. And how we do it, we just click here and press install, and that's it. And we choose the namespace that the Polumi created for us. You remember for the Nginx, this is the namespace Polumi created for us. What we have to remember that external DNS, we will have to configure it to use, not to create the service account, and to use the service account that we created. Okay, and then we hit install. And the last is Cert Manager, and here what we have to remember is also to give the service account that we created in the service account, created false, and here to uncomment the name. The name is Cert Manager. Okay, and we have to remember another, the security context, and this stuff, you know, you need to dive a lot into how to figure it out that it works, but here I give it to you, the security context with FS group and runs user. This will make everything works. And then we can see in the releases that everything is installed, okay? And now we can check also in the, let's say in the external DNS namespace, we can check the pod and see here that it's got our ARN service account for the pod, and everything works. And even if you want to see that everything really works, we can go here and see the external DNS logs that it's watching every change in our DNS, and it's forwarded to here, to the Kubernetes cluster. The last thing that we have is the CICD, and we use GitHub Actions. So what I'm doing in push, okay, I'm cloning the repo, I configure AWS and ECR, I'm installing the dependencies, and then I'm building everything with NX. And look at the command. NX let us to build everything in parallel with the same command. So everything that has a target built, I can run it in the CI. Everything that has a target storybook, I can run it in the CI. And I create the Kubernetes artifacts, and then I deploy it. I create a new namespace, and I create a new namespace with the branch, and then I apply it. So what it enables us to use feature branches for all our developers. And let's see if the CI makes something. And the CI is still building. Okay, now it's building the Docker and push it, and later it will deploy our code. And what it will create for us, and I will show you the namespaces of the branches. So we have a main branch, and it has a namespace. And the namespace has 2 ingresses for our dashboard and our components, and it has the URL right here. And everything is done automatically for us. So we can see in the main branch that we have only the button component that we have here in the storybook, and we can send it to our designer to mess with it and to see that everything is according to the specs. And we can just send him the link to that. Okay, we also have our dashboard. And that's pretty cool. So after we build everything, and now it's build everything, we will deploy it to the Kubernetes. And how we do it, how we deploy it to the Kubernetes, what I've done here is adding for each application that we want to deploy, a Kubernetes YAML file with the project and the repository we want to push. And we also created the ingress, and this is what makes our magic. When you create an index with the URL you want to do and the host with TLS, it generates everything automatically. Okay? So I also added something to the project JSON, 2 targets to the project JSON that can build our Docker file and can create our Kubernetes manifest with replacing our environment variables, okay? So this is with NX run command. So everything that has a target Docker, we build a Docker. Everything that has a target Kubernetes, we build these assets. And this is a very cool feature of NX because if you don't have it, it won't build it and it won't fail. So after we deploy the Kubernetes, okay, we get here the new endpoints that created, okay? And now let's see in Kubernetes that our new namespace that we created now, that's called label created. And here we have the 2 ingresses. And let's see in our certificate, and we'll see that it's trying to issuing a certificate for our label domain, subdomain, okay? And the minute it will issue it, it will happen in the next seconds. Okay, we can go into that URL and watch our branch completely deployed with everything that we have in our workspace. So let's refresh it and see. Cool. It's got issued. So now we can go and see the only new components we have, the label that we created, and now it's in production. Okay, now it's in our staging, but it easily can be promoted to production. But now as we are progressing, we can ship this URL to our stakeholder to watch and see our progress. And it doesn't affect our mainstream branch. We also have it, also side by side, so we can run on parallel features however we want. Also, this deploy the dashboard that we have, yes? So we have the entire application running in our Kubernetes cluster, side by side. We have a complete feature branch. We just need to check out and push it, and we are in production. So this fast workflow can improve significantly our work and to show our stakeholders how we are progressing. And this is what I'm talking about, that it's about the infrastructure. How quickly we can create our components, how quickly we can create our API, how quickly we can deploy it.